Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks are back at SIUH Community Park July 7th to the 12th for a 6-game series against the High Point Rockers. Tonight, first pitch is at 6:30. It's Thirsty Thursday with $5 Bud and Bud Light drafts. Friday, July 10th, first pitch is at 7 p.m. May the Force be with you on Star Wars Night with post-game kids glow around the bases with special lightsaber training packs.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Welcome to your weekend from the Powerhouse Blowtorch Signal, Talk Radio 77 WABC. And broadcasting from the center of the universe, New York City, to the nation and the world. Welcome to another edition of the Dr. Sky Experience. If you're a first-time listener, a show about the many mysteries from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories of American exceptionalism. We love to call this show, and you tell us you enjoy it, a theater of the mind. A show where you can obviously learn something new each time we bring on very special guests. We love it in the form of critical thinking with dialogue, and you can get in, and we hope you do early, in and on the conversation at 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-WABC, of course. And while you're at it, why not download the WABC app? Because as we welcome you into our theater of the mind, don't forget, there are many other rooms to explore, and I'm confident, as many others will testify, that you'll be spending a lot of time. Why? Listening to the great commentary and great shows of the incredible hosts that are here on this Powerhouse Signal. Once again, the phone number, 1-800-848-9222. And as we talk about this particular adventure this morning, something that's near and dear to so many people, the mystery of TWA 800. What happened to that flight some 30 years ago, July 17th, 1996, still searching for the truth. But also, we'd like to welcome you to the dog days of summer. As if you needed a reminder from me, July 3 to August 11 is classified as the dog days of summer, and you may be wondering why. It's the rising before the sun of the brightest star in the heavens, the star Sirius, the dog star in the constellation Canis Major. So hot, sultry days of summer obviously are here, another great heat dome coming to the Midwest to affect some 33 million people. And all this courtesy of a super strong El Nino, one of course that's not only here in this particular area of the United States, but affecting other parts of the world. In the Eastern Pacific, Typhoon Bobby continues to pound the Marianas Islands. Just wait and see what's in store. The special show that we put together with you is about an author named Jack Cashill, and many of his books. One of them we'll be talking about, TWA 800, The Crash, The Cover-Up, and The Conspiracy. And many of you listening to this in the New York metro area, I'm sure will want to chime in and offer your explanation or your actual eyewitness accounts of that very tragic event, hard to believe, some 30 years ago. Who's our guest? It's Jack Cashill, independent writer and producer. Jack Cashill has written a dozen nonfiction books and appeared on C-SPAN's Book 10, TV 10 times. He also produced a score of feature-length documentaries. Jack serves as executive editor of Ingram's Magazine. He writes regularly for American Thinker, American Spectator, and WorldNet Daily, and has all written for the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, the Washington Post, and the Weekly Standard. Jack has a Ph.D. from Purdue University in the American Studies and has taught at a French university, under the auspices of the Fulbright program. Here to learn so much about the mysteries of this 30 years later, Jack Cashill, welcome to the Dr. Sky Experience. Thank you for spending time with us. We appreciate you.
Hey, Dr. Sky, thanks for having me. It's sort of like a homecoming for me since I grew up listening to WABC.
Absolutely, my friend. A powerhouse signal, as I like to talk about, and it'll continue on into infinity, I'm sure. Many people around the world Like yourself, I grew up in the New York metro area, and I had a little tiny transistor radio, maybe $5. My parents had to take the earphone out of my ear and say, "Turn that radio off." And I said, "No, I like to listen to this station." So, Jack, this is amazing.
Where did you grow up?
I was born in Jamaica, Queens, and we moved all over the place.
Okay.
Ozone Park, Jackson Heights, and then we escaped over to New Jersey, and now I'm here in Phoenix.
Well, because I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and in fact, I wrote a book about that experience. It's called Untenable, which I'd recommend for people who grew up in that part of the world to read, because it's a story that no one else wanted to tell.
Absolutely. Jack, again, an honor to have you here. Jack's website, Cashill.com. It is Cashill.com. And if we do have time, Jack, in these 2 hours, and this adventure, as we call it, in the theater of the mind, we'd like to maybe talk a little bit and give people some summaries, so you're in the know on these subjects, and they are, of course, too. Let's start with this tragic event. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I would just say, instead of referring people to my website, I'd rather you refer them to my Substack page, which is where I actively produce now and publish. And that is just go to Substack.com and look up Jack Cashill, and you'll find it.
The best of the best technology. There you go, sir. There you go.
Yeah, it is great. It's a great service. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jack, this is amazing. I had you on a show that I did literally 10 years ago when the book came out, the first edition, talking about this tragic event. And it was great because the phone lines lit up here in the in the Phoenix area, and I'm sure this will continue. But, Jack, take us back to this particular time. I'd rather not read this from things like Wikipedia. You're the experienced person in the room here in the Theater of the Mind. Talk about this and what got you intrigued in this whole story. I mean, it's so fascinating and so tragic, with no answers to this date, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you how I got involved, because I didn't get involved right away. And when TWA Flight 800 occurred, I was living in Kansas City, and I don't recall having an OG moment, where I said, my gosh, this had to be something, XYZ. But about 4 years after the fact, now we're talking about the year 2000, I belonged to this club, and we'd have guest speakers every month. And 1 month, we had James and Elizabeth Sanders. And James was the first investigator on this case, and he wrote a book called The Downing of TWA 800. So I went to the event. It was at a country club. I got there late, wasn't expecting anything, and the room was filled, and that surprised me. Not only was it filled, but it was filled with angry people who totally signed on to Jim's theory that the plane had been shot down. And after a few minutes listening to the questions, I realized, of course, this is TWA's ancestral home, Kansas City. These people are all veteran TWA people. Mm-hmm. And so after it was over, I went out to dinner with the Sanders and a bunch of other people, and I ended up sitting next to Elizabeth Sanders, Jim's wife. A really pretty Filipino-American, sweet as could be. And when I heard her story, and when I learned that she and Jim had been arrested, convicted of conspiracy for Jim's effort to tell the truth about TWA 800, I said, man, there's a story here that needs to be told. Because this could have been my sister, my mother, could have been anyone. And they were both convicted, both indicted, convicted, federal court. And so the next morning I went to breakfast with the Sanders, and I asked them, has there been a documentary done on the subject? And they said no. And at that time, I was doing a lot of documentaries. And so we started talking, and that began between us, a friendship that lasted until Jim died about 5 years ago. And I still in touch with Elizabeth. So once they told me their story, I said to them, before I get involved in this, because I didn't want to just go down some rabbit hole and have it be maybe this, maybe that, who knows. So I agreed to go. They were living in Fort Lauderdale, and I said, they invited me down. We spent 3 days together. But before I got there, I read the two mainstream books that were out about TWA Flight 800, one written by the AP reporter who covered it, Pat Milton, the other by the CNN reporter who covered the case, Christine Negroni. And they were both full on board, inexplicable fuel tank explosion. What a terrible tragedy. But they were very convincing because I didn't know that much about the case.
I see.
And so when I got to the Sanders, I was skeptical. I said, I'm from Missouri. I live in Missouri now. You got to show me, right? And in 3 days, they totally convinced me that they were right. And that's the beginning of our adventure together.
No, that's an incredible story. And I reach out to the audience, and not to ask a dumb question or anything, but I think in all due respect to those that passed on that day and all the cover-up that we hear about and searching for answers, just like in many ways, but not directly aligned with the UAP, UFO thing. When are we ever going to get disclosure? This is totally a different way of trying to skin the cat and try to get answers. I'd like to go out to the audience here, particularly those in the New York metro area, or maybe anybody around the nation that may have had an experience where you actually witnessed this particular episode, a tragedy in American aviation, a tragedy for the world, at 1-800-848-9222, because I'm sure many of those people are still actively in pursuit, like we are, Mr. Cashill, on this particular story. So let's talk about the event itself. The aircraft, the Boeing 747, one of the great aircraft that Boeing's built. Yes, amazing aircraft.
Yeah, the workhorse of the sky. I mean, it's going to Paris from JFK. It takes off at 7:19, perfectly fine, nice evening, something like 71 degrees at when it took off, right around just before sunset. Yes. And it's got 230 people on board. 53 of them are TWA employees. Many of them are deadheading back to Paris. So for the TWA family, it was a huge tragedy. These are their friends and their loved ones. And 12 minutes out of JFK, they're heading east along the south coast of Long Island. And what makes this kind of interesting and unusual is that, the south coast, it's the Hamptons, all that stuff.
I know it well.
This is sort of affluent beach communities. Mm-hmm. At a night like on this, a beautiful summer night, everyone's out. People are on the beach, they're out on their decks, they're out on, their rooftop gardens, whatever. So what happens in full view of literally thousands of people. Some 750 of whom would talk to the FBI. And at 7:31, I'll just skip ahead to save the mystery here. About 7:30 people, many people up and down the coast, at least 56 people, according to the NTSB, trace the event from the horizon. They see rising from the horizon a streak of light, kind of gray-colored, kind of squiggling, arcing over, approaching the airplane, explosion, massive fireball, fall into the sea. That was at 7:31. The plane was at about 13,000 feet. And immediately, people were calling into the, Suffolk County Police, New York City Police, wherever. And the tragedy was, everyone knew what had happened. The plane was gone. It was gone from the transponders at the air traffic controllers. It was gone, period. And the rest of it was, the real story begins after the plane crashes, after the plane descends into the sea. The unsavory part of the story begins then.
That's exactly right. If you're just tuning in to the Dr. Sky Experience in our Theater of the Mind, as we like to call it, Jack Cashill, an author of many subjects, but in this particular episode, we're speaking with him, and you too can answer and have maybe some of your questions answered. Maybe you were a witness to this tragedy. The book, TW800, The Crash, The Cover-Up and the Conspiracy, one of a number of books that he's written, and also a documentary on this. But a little bit back, I just want to go back to the 747 itself. We talk aviation here. I'm just enamored by this, and these are some of the things that I've been so proud of. Over the years, I had a rare interview with Joe Sutter, the Boeing designer of the 747. Oh. He's since passed on. Yes. But the reason I mention that, Jack, is that this particular aircraft, for those people that are very technical and interested in the aviation world, the aircraft was manufactured in July 1971. It officially was a Boeing 747-131. Its registered N number, this is for people who don't want to do deep research on the airplane itself, N93119 with a serial number of 20083. And again, not to steal thunder from your story because it's so powerful, it completed 16,869 flights in 93,303 hours of operation and powered by the very reliable Pratt & Whitney JT9D 7AH turbofan engines. Now, what does that have to do with your story? It goes to tell you that these are trained pilots. These are people that had thousands of hours behind the cockpit knowing what to do with this airplane. So many of these theories, just to put it in summation, and we're going to have you explain to us some of the how ludicrous some of these might be and how maybe relative they are to reality. Some of the theories: a bomb on board, a man-pad shoulder-fired missile, a terrorist aircraft hitting the TWA-800, a mid-level fuel tank, spark explosion, the CIA version, and then it gets even more bizarre, but I don't know. A U.S. Navy missile hits the airplane by accident, trying to hit a terrorist aircraft that flew near the TWA-800. These are all things we read, but take us back to reality. Give us your best assessment of what you think.
And also, Dr. Sky, feel free to add those details because I'm not an aviator.
Okay,
and I don't profess to, know more about the aircraft. Although what I can add is this: in the history of the 747, no plane ever self-combusted in midair.
Exactly.
No plane before 1996, no plane after 1996. And this was the very, very rare mechanical failure in which the NTSB nor the FBAA grounded the fleet and made, improvements so that it wouldn't happen again. They just kept on flying. That includes Air Force One. Let's put that in perspective.
Mm-hmm. No, it's amazing, Jack, what you're talking about here. Now we hear that whole history of the 747. Now they've stopped production. That's a whole nother story for the aviation world. But going back to your story, I mean, this is amazing. People are witnessing this all over the place. Give us an account, as you tell in your book, and describe it. How many witnesses did indeed the FBI, interrogate or take their testimony? I mean, this is an interesting story to tell us.
Yeah, I think the final count was 755.
Wow. And
the FBI... by the way, was totally, they're in over their heads. They're not investigators of aircraft incidents. They shouldn't even been on the job. But on day one, hour one, they were designated to take the job over from the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, who by law is designated to control all and any domestic airplane crashes.
Yes.
Now, they maintain that control by law. I mean, it's not just like a tradition, it's law. Only until it's declared a crime. And this was never declared a crime, the destruction of TW-800. But the FBI just bullied them right out of the way, right immediately, and started interviewing people up and down the coast of Long Island, and in Connecticut, even in New Jersey, people at, ships at sea, a few aviators who saw it, helicopter pilots. And what the FBI would do is they would interview someone and fill out what's called a 302, which is just like a handwritten, document where and then it would be at some point given to a secretary to type up or whatever. So, but they didn't have any GPS. They didn't have any navigation aids. They were really blundering through this, which actually ends up helping the people who wanted this incident to go away. So they interviewed about 755 people. Of those 755, I think the number was 258 who saw a streak of light heading up towards the aircraft. And I think the final NTSB number was 56 who were able to trace that streak of light from the horizon all the way to the aircraft. So many of these witnesses were just excellent. And a lot of them were professionals with serious experience, helicopter pilots, for instance, and, former military people, fishermen, people who were used to knowing what they were seeing. And also people, it's going to sound a little sort of classist maybe, but people who live along the coast of the Hamptons and southern Long Island are used to be taken seriously, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
They can't easily be brushed off. And so they were very persistent. And the one shortcoming of this witness experience is that this took place just before the Internet became commonplace.
You're
At that
absolutely
point,
right.
only about 12% of the people were online. And so the witnesses had no way of knowing.
You report that the New York Times came online, I think, in an internet way back in 1996 or thereabouts, right? You get to continue.
That's right. That's when they first came online, exactly. Right. And so, but the witnesses had no way of knowing there were other witnesses because the New York Times wasn't going to interview them.
Interesting.
First-hand
evidence,
amazing.
Right? But first-hand evidence, right from the cockpit of an aircraft. I'm reading this from your book. No, not reading it verbatim.
Yeah. Right.
We're talking about David McLean, an East Wind pilot, saw the TW-800 explode right in front of him. I mean, what better evidence could you have that something's amiss there?
That's
Obviously,
right.
we see the explosion. Describe that a little better than what I tried to read there, because when you have that first-hand information, they're seeing it right from sitting in the cockpit, like, oh my God, look at this big airliner. I just saw it explode. Tell us more about that. That's incredible.
Yeah, in McLean's case, and it's been a while since I've reviewed this case, but I think I remember it well. I would say the people who I'm going to call them the conspirators, the people who wanted this to go away. What they liked about McLean is that he didn't see the missile approach. What they didn't like about McLean is that he saw the plane fall right out of the sky.
That's amazing.
Now, why this was a problem is because the CIA, which had very discreetly taken control of the investigation from the FBI on day one or day two. Mm-hmm. At the end of the way they closed the investigation was the CIA was commissioned, this is crazy, to create an animation that would somehow explain away what the eyewitnesses saw. And so what they concluded, and Dr. Scott, you could probably speak to this more eloquently than I can. What they concluded was that there was an onboard explosion, center fuel tank, spontaneous, unknown origin. It blew the nose off the plane, and then the noseless plane ascended from that point another 3,500, 4,000 feet,
ridiculous,
confusing people into
ridiculous.
Thinking they saw a missile going up.
Totally ridiculous, but it was spoon-fed to us, and so many people have now obviously through your research and your books, investigative journalism, people are starting to wake up. But 30 years later, oh my gosh, I mean, this is still the greatest mystery. And then it goes deep as we get into this interview with our very special guest, Jack Cashill. Your questions and observations at 1-800-848-9222. Maybe some of you even witnessed this or know people who had, or sadly, again, maybe you knew people who actually perished on that particular aircraft. But I think I have it right. Didn't George Stephanopoulos once say, and I don't know if the quote is right, tell the truth, but do it slowly? Is there some truth to what I just said?
I don't know that he said that, but
okay.
That I think
I don't know.
That's
the larger
strategy here.
Right. That's what I thought I heard. But that's interesting. Yeah. So the main role of the CIA is to deceive. That's the business that they're in. So obviously, truth
right. I mean,
fiction.
they gave out medals at the end of the day, right?
Right.
I can tell you the guy who was the head. He has that picture in the CIA magazine, Randolph Taus. He gets like the president's medal for doing a good job. And if this had been a foreign adversary, and if it somehow served our national purpose, obviously he gets it. But when you're dealing with the American people, that's not your role. In fact, the CIA should never have been involved. They have no authority at all to meddle in a domestic airplane crash.
You're so right. And if you watch that video, I guess unless they've edited it again, it keeps insisting on what? Center fuel tank, fuel tank, fuel tank. It keeps going on and on and on. But you're so right. I'm not an aviation.
Did not see a missile.
Right. I'm not an aviation expert by any means, but I know plenty of pilots that are. But what I find ludicrous from the science of astronomy and space and physics, you don't necessarily see the front section of a 747 deciding to propel itself higher into the air. And I think in your book you describe it even better. Seasoned 747 pilots said, hell no. That front section would just drop like a rock because obviously it defies the laws of physics, which is totally amazing. This is fascinating, folks. Yes, this is a fascinating interview today, talking about something, again, near and dear to so many people out there. But what, Jack? I mean, simply, never has any real conclusion been put forth on this. It's still what? In the mind of speculation, that in the do not know, you do not know, need to know file, right? Or something like that. Never to tell you the truth.
It's pretty much there. And now, 30 years later, it remains a mystery, right? Mm-hmm. And yet it's not a mystery. I think the White House knew within a couple hours exactly what happened. And I think they realized that this is an incident they could not have exposed until at least after November. It was an election year. Mm-hmm. And the Clintons were coming back from the dead after the November 1994 midterms. And they were afraid of being primaried early on, but they've climbed back. They're running against Bob Dole. You and I could beat Bob Dole, and they were back in the lead.
Right. Absolutely.
And the last thing they wanted was to lose that momentum. And this would have done it, whether it was a terrorist or whether it was a naval misfire or even whether it was a bomb. It would have totally distracted from their mission. And this was the number one news story of 1996. It drove the presidential election off the front pages for a month. And so it had to go away.
Jack Cashill is our guest. We continue with him and you, ladies and gentlemen, at 1-800-848-9222, the Dr. Sky Experience, bringing you, I think, an exceptional interview with a journalist that spent a lot of time studying this from all different angles. Your questions and comments at 1-800-848-9222. The Dr. Sky Experience continues on the other side of this commercial break.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Joe Sutter, the designer of the Boeing 747, and you're listening to the Dr. Sky Show.
Some information on the Boeing 747. Its first flight back on February 9, 1969. First commercial service January 22, 1970, and its first launch customer was Pan Am. At that time, 25 airplanes were ordered by Pan Am for $525 million. Major innovations, the first use of high-bypass turbofan engines, and the number of 747 models produced, there were 6. The expected life of an average 747, some 15 years with 400 deliveries. And the number of 747s built to date, more than 1,548. We continue with our very special guest. All of our guests are special in the theater of their mind, but this story, which still perplexes many, Flight TWA 800, the crash, the cover-up, and the conspiracy by our author and guest, Jack Cashill. This event nearly 30 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, and still is something that we're concerned about today. Talk a little bit more. We talked a little bit before, and we didn't give you a fair chance at this. Maybe a connection to the Clinton administration, without, me pointing a finger. I'm not the one who knows all this. But the point is, talk a little bit more about this whole particular time with the Clintons and this election coming up, and maybe a good reason to not give us the truth on this, because it might have upset an entire election cycle, as you described. Tell us more, Jack.
Right. I break down conspiracy theories, Dr. Sky, into 2 basic categories. Mm-hmm. One is conspiracies of concealment, which are kind of a dime a dozen. The others are conspiracies of execution, which are extremely rare at this level, almost impossible. So I've become probably the Dr. No of the 9/11 inside job crap. So I'm supposed to be a conspiracy theorist. I have a reputation. And if you write a book with a major publisher and they have lawyers, so everything you can't just make stuff up. You can't just improvise or speculate. So this was a conspiracy of concealment. And I think the concealment began the very night of the crash. The Clintons were in Washington. We know that. I know because I've talked to Buzz Patterson, who carried the nuclear football for the president.
Yeah, we had him once as a guest. What an amazing guy he is, too.
Yeah, great guy. And he was, as he told me, the Clintons never left the family quarters that evening. So they didn't go down to the Situation Room, where George Stephanopoulos says he was. And that was on he inadvertently said that on 9/11 when he was, filling time on, during the ABC broadcast.
Yes.
Bombing. But the people in the Situation Room were trying to assess the information coming in. And what's fascinating about that night is that even though it was the number one news story of the year, and even though we almost went to war with Iran over it.
Wow, here we go again with Iran, right, Jack? This is incredible. Right. Even back there, it's not disproven.
There's a hot spot in our 47-year Cold War.
Here we go.
None of the principals involved wrote about it in their memoirs. So Clinton writes a 900-page book. He dedicates one paragraph to Flight 800. Hillary, in her 500 pages, gives it a half sentence. Louis Freeh, head of the FBI, not a word. Leon Panetta, chief of staff, not a word. Stephanopoulos, in the room, not a word. Dick Morris, he's interesting because in the chapter, he refers to that chapter as the terror summer of 1996, not a word. Mm-hmm. And then, other than to say that he just listed as one of the terror events of that summer, I was on a radio show with Morris once, and I asked him, I said, Dick, tell us what you know. And I asked it 3 times, and 3 times he made believe that I wasn't there. He didn't hear it, and just talked right over me. And then I didn't want to embarrass the host. I'm not getting anything out of him. So they decided not to talk about it after the fact. The Senate Intelligence Committee report for that year doesn't mention it, even though the CIA and the FBI were both heavily involved. So no one wanted to talk about what happened.
Amazing.
But what did happen, what we do know happened, that came out of that evening is that I believe it was Jamie Gorelick, who was the Deputy Attorney General, who assigned the FBI to take over the investigation from the NTSB. An illegal move, but it was done publicly. I believe it was probably, I can't name names here, I'd just be guessing, but it had to come from the top to instruct the CIA to oversee the investigation by the FBI. And that would lead to some interesting dynamics down the road, because the 2-man missile team for the FBI, you had one very good, noble truth teller and one potential scumbag on that team. And the CIA liked the scumbag because he was playing their game.
Wow. This is amazing. You know, Jack, like we call this the blowtorch signal of this radio station, and obviously it is. You're lighting up the phone lines with your own blowtorch. So let's go to the callers right now. Let's go to line number 2 and welcome Mark in Arizona. Mark, you're on with author Jack Cashill on the TWA 800 Mystery. How are you this evening?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Cashill. 10 years ago, Steve Gates had a show in Phoenix, and I heard you on the show that night or that day. It was on Paul Wright's show. And I called in and won your book that you had written on the TWA 800.
All right. And congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Can you sign it now? Just kidding. No, on July 17th, my wife and I headed to Atlanta for the Olympics, and we heard all this commotion going on when we landed, and it started all this investigation. So my question for you, can you tell us if there was ever a FOIA request by any organization about the details of what actually happened? And also, my father-in-law worked for American Airlines for 30 years out of Kennedy. And when he retired, he was there for 40 years. He said there's no way possible for that fuel tank to explode. No way possible.
Right.
So can you also tell us about the challengers and their part? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's a good, because that leads to an interesting segue. Yeah, you raise a good point. It was the Atlanta Olympics started on the 19th of July. So the military, the Navy especially, was on a high state of alert. there's all these foreign dignitaries coming in, plane gets shot out of the sky. That's trouble. You have to shut down the skies. As to the Pierre Salinger part, by the way, I spoke to the QBs in Prescott, and about 2 years ago, this year I'm going to come to Phoenix to talk to the QB chapter there.
Well, we need to sit and have lunch if you'd be so kind. That would be nice to sit and chat with you in person. You bet.
The Salinger thing opens the way to a kind of a semi-amusing anecdote. I know it's not funny for people who are family members on this plane. Sometimes you just need to break from the solemnity of it. But
okay.
In the fall of 1996, let me jump forward. The fall of 2016, Hillary Clinton is running for president against Donald Trump. Jim Kallstrom, who's the FBI head of investigation, is on Fox News just about nightly as their national security advisor.
I remember it.
And Kallstrom made very clear his distaste for the Clintons. And he went, in fact, as far as to endorse Donald Trump, which was kind of unprecedented and unprofessional, but he did it. And so every time he'd appear, I'd hear from the family members of the victims. And they would say, when I see him, if he wants to affect the election, why doesn't he just tell the truth about TWA 800?
Exactly.
So good point. So what I did is I sent him, I have a private eye friend who got his address, and I sent him a registered letter making that request. And then to avoid, I live in a Democratic neighborhood, by the way. I don't like to be around during elections. So I went to France for a couple of weeks. And since it was November, I sort of go to south of France because the weather's nice. So in the evening of, about a week before the election, I'm sitting out at the promenade in Nice. I don't know if anyone's been there, but it's right along the Mediterranean. I'm sitting on a bench looking over the Mediterranean. And my phone rings, and I pick it up, and it says Connecticut, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I had heard that Kallstrom, everyone says this, was a totally profane bully. And I pick up the phone, and he goes, "Is this Jack Cashill?" I said, "Yeah." "What the F-it? I mean, he's dropping F-bombs on me like I was his own personal Dresden.
Wow.
I mean, he was just obliterating me. And then I got him to calm down. And I said, "Listen, hey, we're on the same side here." I said he was very upset that the family members weren't, buying what he was selling. And got him to calm down. We're on the same side in this election. Let's try to just get over the finish line here. And then he goes, "Are you not one of those people who believe that a terrorist shot down the airplane, are you?" Right? He seems so out of it. I said, "No, I'm not. I wish it were that way." When I first got into it, I was hoping that would be the outcome because it's more explainable, I said, but the unfortunate fact is that our Navy shot it down. And then he really went off. And here's the funny part. He goes, "You sound like that effing Pierre Salinger. He held an effing press conference on the effing French Riviera." Right after, in November of 1990.
Right, and Salinger's hypothesis was a Navy missile, of course. Right, that's
right. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there thinking, thank God he doesn't know where I am. Right?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm on the French Riviera. We'd have been in war with France in a couple of weeks if that had been.
It's amazing.
If he knew where I was.
Jack, let me go back to Mark. If you have a quick follow-up here, we're almost up against the break here, but I appreciate your following up with us and also following the previous shows that I did. It's nice to meet somebody after that many years who's followed that. Thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. Before you leave tonight, would you mention your books on Ashley Babbitt and the black educational system in America and what happens to the blacks?
Yeah, my book on Ashley Babbitt is actually called Ashley, The Untold Story of the Women of January 6th. And I wrote a book on not so much on black education as in the collapse of American cities from my own personal experience. The book is called Untenable, The True Story of White Ethnic Flight from America's Cities.
Interesting. Thank you, Mark in Arizona. Jack, we're going to come up on a break here in just a moment, but I just want to remind everybody, if you're still on the line, and hope you are, line 3 is Alexi. He'll get on. Line 4 is George in Westchester, and line 5, Tom in Long Island. But what about you, ladies and gentlemen? Do you have any personal feelings about this? Of course you do, and maybe you are also witness to some of this, that we're talking about a tragic day in American history, the destruction of TWA Flight 800. The contact number 1-800-848-9222. As we speak with Jack Cashill, give out your Substack site, because if I just give your website, I know you wanted me to direct people. What is that so people can hear it again?
Yeah, the Substack is just go to substack.com. It's a great service, by the way, and I do a daily column. It's like I'm a daily columnist. And you go to substack.com and you search Jack Cashill, and it'll take you to my page. And then you can subscribe. You don't have to pay to subscribe either. You can pay if you like, but you don't have to. So.
There you go.
I take all comers.
Well, God bless you, Jack, and we'll even talk later in Hour 1 or even Hour 2, an article that you've written back in June of this year and subtitled What John Gotti Knows About TWA Flight 800. We'll be right back with our special guest, Jack Cashill, the Dr. Sky Experience. The Theater of the Mind continues. And again, we want to thank our helmsmen, both Bill and Jackson, for making sure that you get on the air and that we can hear you on this powerhouse blowtorch station, Talk Radio 77 WABC. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is legendary pilot Dick Rutan, who was first to fly nonstop around the world, and you are listening to the Dr. Sky Show.
The most passengers ever carried on a 747. And the Al 747 took off with 1,086 people on takeoff and landed with 1,088. 2 babies were born in flight. The reason for the high passenger load? Evacuation of Ethiopian Jews from Addis Ababa. We continue with Jack Cashill, 48 minutes after the hour. Jack, amazing stories about not only the aircraft, but the sad tragedy of how this happened as we continue with Explore It. Let's continue with our guests. They've been patient on the line, and the callers, I should say. Line number 3, Alexi in Queens. You're on with Jack Cashill. Good morning.
Yes, I address this to your guest. Sir, first and foremost, I'm going to make 2 points briefly. I will hope you will appreciate these points. Sure. First of all, there was an excellent film that was made some decades ago. And the name of the film is No Highway in the Sky. It features a prominent actor, James Stewart. It is about an aircraft engineer who he plays, who is insisting that he knows something about why his company's planes are breaking apart into pieces in the air. And throughout the story, he's not believed until finally at the end, he is correct. He proves it as his theory is proven, and he is correct. An amazing story. You must watch the film.
What's the name of it again, Alexi? I didn't hear it clearly, and maybe the listeners didn't tell us again.
Oh, okay. The name of the film is No Highway, like a highway you drive on, in the sky.
No Highway in the Sky.
It stars James Stewart, and it's an excellent movie. Excellent about aircraft that are suddenly breaking into pieces and such and exploding in the air.
Well, Alexi, thank you for that bit of information on aviation structure and the integrity of aircraft. Jack, a comment from you, if you'd like, on that. I think it's important to.
No, I mean, it's. I don't know that movie, but I'll check it out because it's a subject that interests me. But it's happened in. I don't know when that movie was made, but in the era of jet A fuel, which is sort of like kerosene, planes have become far less flammable and far less subject to, like internal explosions that are caused by, sparks or some other thing. But so it's, and that's why the 747s have, other than Flight 800, have never experienced that. Never.
Well, you're going to give us even greater information in hour number 2, I'm sure, about the whole CIA theory and the video, which many people, of course, like yourself, are sitting back going, wait a minute. From all the witness testimony, eyewitness testimony, and others, it certainly can't be, as we talk about a cover-up. Let's continue on the phone lines. They're important to us, all the callers. Line number 4, we welcome George in Westchester. Good morning. You're on with Jack Cashill. How you doing there?
Gentlemen, Sherlock Holmes has nothing over you guys. Tremendous show. Let me just say, Let me just set this up. 2 months before Flight 800, the plane crash in the Everglades in Florida that went down, killing over 100 people on that plane.
Very sad. Mm-hmm.
And then also a couple of days after Flight 800, the Olympic bombing took place. And the security guard, who was a hero, saw the package, started evacuating people. And then they accused him, because he was a white guy, they were accusing him that he planted it to become like a hero, which was psychotic. The FBI was doing it. The media piggybacked on it. And eventually the gentleman, who was a great hero, settled for millions of dollars for defamation. So what happens a couple of days before the Olympics starts, Flight 800 goes down. Like you said before, there's like 700-800 eyewitnesses. But we never really get to even hear any of these witnesses.
You're right, suppressed.
We never hear anything about it, and we never really get to scrutinize even people who were the passengers on that plane, just to do a full investigation. Now, let me fast forward to 2001.
Okay, please do. We're limited on time, but go ahead.
Yeah, but the people are loving this. 2001 November, the flight that crashed over 2001 in Bell Harbor. Beautiful clear day. They blamed the pilots for that. They said wake turbulence. They couldn't control the instruments and stuff. Well, the instruments weren't up to par, and because this was right after 9/11. So, but to me, I think it was they didn't want to scare the people before the Olympics that a terrorist attack occurred, and also right after 9/11, 2 months. Even though we had the sneaker bomber in December of 2001.
Well, you bring good points, George. Not to cut you short, I'm going to try to get others on the air here, but a response back from you, Jack, if you so like. Go ahead.
Yeah, both excellent observations. The fellow's name was Richard Jewell. Why they liked Richard Jewell as the suspect is because that meant it wasn't terrorism, just some sort of a nutty security guard. They made a good movie about that too. Clint Eastwood did. The November crash of that plane was headed for the Dominican Republic, November 2001, was highly suspicious. No one, me included, wanted that plane to be terrorism. It's confirmation bias ruled the day.
Are you referring, Jack, excuse me, are you referring to the one that crashed along the Jamaica area? I mean, right along the Rockaway Beach area?
Rockaway, I believe. Yeah, Rockaway Beach.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And Colin Powell was the one, Secretary of State is the one who went to the scene. When does that happen?
No, that's crazy. But one of the theories there, again, not to cut you short, is that the vertical stabilizer on that plane, which was made out of like a plexiglass or something, not a regular metal, structure, also helped that aircraft go down. But if I believe that is really the truth, I don't know. But that's an interesting one that we're talking about here. Another sad loss of life. And I always thought that was the shoe bomber thing, but that's really not the same aircraft that we're talking about, right?
I was suspicious, but I just tell you, the psychology of every American in November 2001 is we didn't want it to be terrorism.
Mm-hmm. Right? I hear you.
We didn't want to have our planes, the airplane shut down, the airport shut down, and we wanted to get back to our life. And the psychology of that era, you'd have to have been there. I mean, young people don't understand that at all.
No, it's great to listen to these stories and the books that you've written, particularly about this mystery. For 30 years, I mean, look at this. This has never been solved. Let's try, if we can, to get another caller on before the top of the hour. Line number 4, George in Westchester. You've been patient. You're on with Jack Cashill. And we lost him, but call back if you so desire. Line 5, Tom in Long Island. You're on the air with Jack Cashill. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Dr. Scott. Sky, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I remember this evening very well. My wife came out running out of the house telling me that a plane had just gone down off the coast, up just south of us. I live in Shirley, and I was like, unbelievable. The next day I go to work, and I stopped at the 7-Eleven up by the expressway in William Floyd Parkway, and this is about maybe 6 in the morning, 5:45, and there's 6 U.S. divers in there gathering up like bananas, stuff like that, and rolls and coffee. And one of them, I was getting my coffee. I go, wow. I says, you guys heading out to Gabreski Airport? I go, you got something going on? He goes, no, we're U.S. divers. He goes, we're going out to look for that wreck that one night. And I was like, that is like really weird to me. So I bought them all coffee, and I thanked them for their patriotism. And I went to work, and the foreman, who was a big fisherman, was out the night before off the coast in a dory with him and his buddy fluke fishing, and he told me, I seen that missile go up. So now that's two things in the same morning, the day after this event.
Yeah.
And got my mind thinking about, I don't know, after they started pulling wreckage up, I got transferred to another job, and I met up with a friend of mine who was working on a different job at Calverton, the old Grumman grounds, where they were staging all the particles that were from the plane wrecked going up there. Right. And he got a call to go back in and clean the job out because they're taking back the building temporarily. Because they went in there to replace everything when Grumman left to put it back to Navy standards from the 1960s. If you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
Okay, so he goes in there with an Instamatic camera, and the plane is now somewhat put back together. No wings. He snaps some pictures. The port side of the fuselage, all the windows up until where about the wing area was, were in line. But the piece that was put back in that was like missing, it was huge. I would say like it would encompass maybe 8 windows, maybe a little more.
Sure.
They were not in consent, they were not typical with the rest of the windows you would see on a plane. They were spaced differently. Like, in other words, the paint really didn't match. The color wasn't the same. And he says, you know what? I think the Navy shot this plane down.
That's amazing.
About a week before, I was watching an old movie on TMC. Mm-hmm. It was called The Bedford Incident.
Yeah, I know it well. That's a great movie.
Sidney Poitier, Richard Whitmark, and the kid who used to play Dano on Hawaii Five-0. And they're talking at the end, chasing this Russian sub up in the Arctic. And
it's funny, yeah.
And it was like he had this crew under immense practice and drill fire stations and.
Don't tell us the end. You'll ruin it, Tom. I'm holding. Tom, you got to hear this, and we're out of time here in just a minute with Jack Jess, and we'll do hour number 2. Your story, Tom, is fascinating. You got to be kidding me, folks. I'm holding a copy of the DVD in my hand, The Bedford Incident, Richard Whitmark and Sidney Poitier. That's amazing, but don't tell us the end of the movie, though, Tom. There you go. But no, thank you for testifying about something. You're right. So many strange events that happened. That's amazing.
Right. To Tom's point, the reconstruction of that plane was not done honestly at all. What they did is they hammered it into place to support the conclusion that the explosion came from the interior of the plane, not the exterior. Amazing. And so they had to bend metal to make that, to create that illusion and sustain it. We're just talking a handful of people who are in on this. It's not everyone. Most people there thought they were doing a good job and doing hard work. The divers.
Hour number 1 ends. Sorry to cut everybody short, but Tom in Long Island, thank you for testifying. Continue, ladies and gentlemen, and if Dave would like to hold on in Pennsylvania, we'll get to you in hour number 2. 1-800-848-9222. 30 years later, the mystery of TWA 800, the crash, the cover-up, and the conspiracy in the opinion in a book or 2 from our author, Jack Cashill. We'll see you on the other side of these announcements as the Dr. Sky experience in the Theater of the Mind continues in just a few moments.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. To the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hour number 2 continues on the Dr. Sky Experience, the Theater of the Mind, as we like to call it. From where? The powerhouse blowtorch signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC, and proud to be broadcasting from the center of the universe, New York City to the nation and the world. And if you're a first-time listener, we do appreciate you, as well as our regular listeners. A show about the great mysteries of the universe, from astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, stories of American exceptionalism. You can get in on the conversation, and we encourage you to do that at 848-9222. And again, proud to say it, while you're at it, why not download the WABC app? From our Theater of the Mind, there are many other rooms that you can go into with great information that I'm sure you'll find useful for your day and your night. We continue with special guests. All guests are special. Jack Cashill, author of so many books. We'll get into some of the others. But the primary focus is the 30-year tragedy of TWA 800, Behind the Cover-Up and Conspiracy, with author Jack Cashill. Jack, welcome back. Let's go to the callers and due respect for those that didn't get in hour number one.
Sure.
We say good morning to Dave on line 2 in Pennsylvania. You've been patient. Good morning. Your comment or question.
Hello, Dr. Sky. First of all, do you have any books out? I would like to read at least one book of yours, and what is your pen name? And then I'll get to the guest.
No, well, I don't at the point, and that's something I'd like to work on, but I'd like to focus on the guest.
Me too, but I can't.
All right.
I want to write a book on short stories, on all kind of different environmental and ecological matters to
Sounds
get
good.
to the truth. If one leads another one to some form of truth, and the one after that combines the two to make more truth out of tropical rainforest deforestation, plastic pollution.
All right, but hey, I got to slow you down.
pollution.
I got to put the brakes on the asbestos pads there, but I want you, Dave. I appreciate you asking me about a book. Yes, that's in my goal plan, and I'll be talking about that some other time. But in due respect to the guest, do you have a question regarding TWA 800 as we move forward? Go ahead.
TWA. Okay, now this is sort of related. Drones and TWA. Drones were attempted to shoot the president. Was that right, what I heard on the news? Drones
I don't know for sure.
I'll tell you what, hey, Steve, let me take this answer, okay?
Go ahead, because we got to move forward. Dave, I appreciate your concerns, but we got to stay on measure here. Go ahead, Jack.
Drones play a part in this story, in the TWA 800 story, because it seems altogether likely that there was a missile test going on at that night with drones as the target. We know, I saw the video of a missile test off the south coast of Long Island 5 days earlier, in which, from all appearances, this is an amateur video shot off a Brooklyn rooftop. It appears that a missile comes up out of the sea, destroys a drone, and then the drone, flutters back to the water, and the missile, tracks exactly like a missile would track. That was 5 days before, July 12th. On July 7th, multiple people recorded seeing a drone missile exercise in that same basic body of water. So drones do play a part.
Well, Jack, I thank you for that, and I appreciate your generality there, Dave. But let's move on to line number 4. Ed, he's been patient in Long Island. You're on with Jack Cashill, and I just asked the audience, in due respect to the guest, that we try to stay on.
Dr. Scott, I'm not patient. I'm happy to listen. I wish the show was 3 hours.
Wow.
Truly.
Thank you.
It's always good, even in John's show on Sunday mornings when you get on. It's always good to hear you.
Thank you.
I want to tell you that I had a coworker come into work the next day after Flight 800 happened, and she said she was on the south shore of Long Island on the beach. And here we used to have the Grucci fireworks factory, the Grucci company that had.
I remember.
So they're well known. You've heard of them.
Absolutely, and world famous.
She said that she saw what she thought was a report, a skyrocket go up, and she said, "Oh, there must be fireworks tonight." And she watched it go up, and she watched it hit a plane going over, and the plane exploded. This is what she told me, with a white, just the blood drawn from, her. I'm feeling the same feeling right now from her face, and we know the tragedy that happened, and I have to ask your guest about fuel tanks. So this plane took off, and it had full fuel tanks. So when fuel tanks begin to empty, maybe there's some oxygen in them, or what is in them? What goes in them? And what would cause an explosion? A static electric effect with the jet fuel, or what's the mechanical engineering on this that could even?
Well, what happened is that for 4 years, the National Transportation Safety Board tried to simulate some combination of sparks and they couldn't do it. So what they had to do was just put. And they had to jack with the formula. They had to put gasoline in the center fuel tank to make it explode.
Gasoline would do it.
When my book came out, Dr. Sky, the angriest letters I got, and I must have gotten 50 of them, were from maybe not 50. It was probably 20 is more realistic. From people who had worked on fuel tanks in airplanes. They said, "No way, no how, could not have happened." Right. And they said the spark that is generated by this one element, he said, imagine 3 fireflies tied together. That's what it was.
That's amazing.
And Jet A fuel, by the way, is you could drop a match into it without exploding it. Now, once it's vaporized,
it's more like
it's a different story.
Yeah, it's more like heater
kerosene.
Oil. It's
kerosene, yeah.
Right,
kerosene,
lower
exactly.
flammability, I gather, is the way they do it. But I'm not an expert in the jet fuel area, but there you go. It's
once it's vaporized by like an exterior explosion, then all bets are off. Then it becomes very volatile.
Ed in Long Island, thank you so much for your kind comments about the show, and even more important, being part of this show, as we call it, a Theater of the Mind. I wish you a great weekend and hope you'll be a continuance here on the Dr. Sky Experience. We go now to line number 5, Robert in Philadelphia. He's a regular caller and obviously brings insightful commentary. You're on with Jack Cashill. Thanks for your patience.
Hi, Dr. Sky. As always, it's great to talk to you, and I appreciate your wonderful guest, Jack. I'm looking at this logically, and we know that there was one of them Aegis-style naval ships in there, whether they were doing tests or not, and we know that only a president could get the CIA to take over something that rightfully belongs to the FBI and the NTSB. So who else would be responsible if it wasn't an accident? Why would they cover up just an accident? And is there anybody associated with not just the Clintons, but the entire administration on the passenger list? And I'll hang up and listen to your answer. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Robert. I always appreciate your questions.
Yeah, I know the last question first. There was no one on that plane who deserved his or own missile. So people say, have you checked the passenger list? Yeah, but that's not the case. It's not like you don't take out a 747 to kill one person you could kill in the terminal. As to the other part of the question, who authorized the CIA? You're right. That had to come from the top. And it's so, the problem was, this should have been busted immediately. But the New York Times was the only agency, the only news operation to which the FBI would speak. And they were so jealous of that connection that they chose to do what the FBI told them to do, which meant they did not interview one single eyewitness to the anyone who thought they saw a missile was off limits to the New York Times. 0. And so they never mentioned the CIA involvement up until the very end when CIA produces the silly animation. So the failure of the New York Times to tell the truth about the story doomed the story. They could have busted it in a week if they had chosen to.
Let's do a deep dive on something here in the book, and I hope I have the name right. Terry Stacy, apparently seed residue here, and this is something when it goes back to some kind of an explosive detonation, outside the aircraft to bring it down.
Right.
Not to be a scholar in explosives, but the point is RDX, PETN, explosive residue, these components of Semtech, or otherwise simply known as plastic explosives. But the difference is Semtech and C4 are not the same thing because C4 does not contain PETN. Why do I know this? I'll tell the audience another time on that. But this is interesting. What's the story with this Terry Stacy? Was there indeed material that she actually got from a seat back, or am I just off measure on this one?
No,
Totally have it
you're.
wrong.
In fact, that's where James Sanders got involved in Terry Stacey.
Okay.
Terry Stacey, James Sanders' wife, Elizabeth, was the trainer for TWA. She knew half the flight attendants on board, and it was very. They went to one memorial after another. At one of them, Elizabeth introduces Terry to her husband, Jim, who's an investigative reporter. And the first thing that Terry says to Jim is, "There's a cover-up going on," and Terry's working inside the investigation, so he's feeding information to Jim. And then Terry says there is a residue streak across like 3 aisles, just those 3 aisles, a reddish residue streak against the seat backs.
Right.
So Jim says, scrape some off, and I'll have it tested in an independent lab, because the FBI was concealing the results, the testing of what this was. And so Terry goes to scrape it off, and it doesn't scrape, so he just takes a couple chunks of foam rubber. I mean, little teeny chunks.
Evidence,
gives
right?
them to Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Sanders has them tested, and they prove consistent with rocket fuel residue. And now, here's the kicker is that what they got him on, you referred earlier to that crash in the Everglades a couple months prior.
Yes.
After that crash, they passed a law saying if you're a scavenger in an airplane site, you can be arrested. Well, they arrested the Sanders and Stacey for stealing airplane parts, meaning these little pinches of foam rubber.
Unbelievable.
And the fact that Jim was an investigative reporter was not allowed into evidence. So they went to trial and convicted them. And so that's how desperate they were to conceal the truth of this.
Well,
Also,
that's
by the
incredible.
way, Jim,
yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jim took a chunk to his contact at CBS, who was gung-ho, Christina Morgensen, for getting at the truth, and they turned her down. Absolutely. Not only they turned her down, they called into the FBI and had them confiscate the chunk of foam rubber.
Yeah, amazing. So the NTSB starts the investigation, and then the clamps come down. FBI gets it, and then it moves on to the CIA with bigger clamps.
Right.
And then we see a video that shows an ascending part, the front nose, the big bulgy part. If you're not a 747, since this is Theater of the Mind, you'll have to check it out and look at a picture if you've never seen one of these aircraft. And that's what we're supposed to believe. A center fuel tank ignition right outside 15,000 feet above the ocean, very close to the shore on its way across the ocean. An amazing story. The video, if you keep watching it, I keep repeating this because it's, I think, good for effect. The announcer of that keeps talking about center fuel tank. Center fuel tank.
Yeah.
Center fuel tank. No airplane. Look, if you look at physics, obviously the nose of a 747, that piece breaks off. It doesn't have retro rockets to keep it going up in the sky.
No.
Not at all. I got to bring this up in the limited time we have, and I just want to remind everybody, if you want to join us in this Theater of the Mind, the Dr. Sky Experience, 1-800-848-9222. Still time, and we hope that you'll be part of our excursion here, our adventure. Here's the story I'd like you to talk more about. It's interesting. An article that you've written back in June, What John Gotti Knows About TWA Flight 800. Wow, what a headline. Talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, it was. This was an interesting moment in my life. I had gotten an email from arts and entertainment producers who were wanting to do a documentary, and I neglected to look at the title of the documentary they were working on. Right. So they said, we'll call you. We'll have someone call you on Thursday or whatever. And I said, sure. So they call on time. The call comes in. And I said, Jack Cashill here, just like, casually. And the voice on the other end says, this is John Gotti. And so I said to myself,
I would have said, yeah, really? Okay.
And I said,
try another name.
and I said to myself, and I thought, hey, John Gotti, And I said, hey, John, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Good way to go, Jack. There you go.
And then he explains that he's the son of the Dapper Don, John Gotti, and we have a point of common interest. And I tell you what, I'm not going to name the guy in question. I don't want to get, well, let's just say that we'll call him Agent X. Okay.
Okay. Fair enough.
FBI agent. Agent X, Gotti believes, was after Gotti gets out of prison in '99, he asked his father if it's okay if he gets out of the family business, and the father says, "Yeah." Father dies a few years later, and John goes back to just trying to make a living as a suburban Long Island father. He got a family. They deserve a father who's not in prison. And then about 15 or so years later, Agent X decides to bring Gotti back into court on a charge of like a racketeering charge. He's about 20 years old. In fact, this story is told in the movie Gotti that stars John Travolta as Gotti, if anyone wants to check that out. And so it turns out that he believes that Agent X was the same guy who falsified the second FBI 302 on the very best eyewitness 73. And let me just introduce this, because I opened my book talking about Witness 73.
Sure.
And about, I think it was 2009, we're talking 13 years after the crash, she calls me in my office and says, Jack, this is Witness 73. Do you know who I am? I said, yeah, upside down Nike swoosh. And she goes, you're right. And because she had the best perspective of anyone. She was an aviation professional. She saw both the missile. She saw the plane. She saw the missile hit the plane. Perfectly broke out the deconstruction of the airplane before the debris field confirmed what you saw. And I said, but tell me about the second interview you did, Miss 73, because in that second interview, you'd say that you were drinking Long Island iced teas, that, you maybe didn't see what you thought you saw, and that they wrote you off. She goes, well, let me start by telling you, I don't know what a Long Island iced tea is, right?
It's a good.
And I said,
but yeah.
I said, well, could it have been another drink? Mm-hmm. And she said, no, because I don't drink at all. Amazing. And then she said, there's something you ought to know. I said, what's that? She goes, there was no second interview. And then I said to her, you are one of at least 4 key eyewitnesses for whom either the FBI or the CIA manufactured a second interview to discredit your first interview.
That's amazing.
Now, the name on the 302 that was dropped into her file is Agent X. And I know that Agent X was on the missile team, and he was the one fighting to sustain the CIA's interpretation. John Gotti believes that Agent X was manufacturing evidence against him as well to bring him back to court. 4 trials, Agent X pushed through 4 mistrials. And finally the judge said, stop this. You're trying to convict an honest man here. And but Gotti obviously been thinking about that. And so we talked for about a half hour. I was impressed by how much he knew about TWA 800.
Amazing story. That is incredible. And again, I know who Agent X is, and obviously for the sensitivity, we're not going to reveal that. And I don't blame you, because that is a rather litigious, who knows? I mean, that goes deeper than we want to go to right now. And I respect that anonymity on your part. But this is interesting. What I look at before we go to the break here in just a couple of moments, again, the hard break. One of the best, after reading your book and checking this out again, and I appreciate this, Mike Wire, the bridge worker.
Yeah.
He seems to be what? Am I right in this, Jack? He seems to be, in my opinion, one of the most credible of all the witnesses because of where he was, what he saw. Talk about Mike Wire for a moment.
Yeah, first of all, Mike and I have become great friends over the years because we've worked on this stuff together. In fact, I'll see him next week when I'm going down the Jersey Shore.
Tell him we said hi. There you go.
He lives in Bucks County. Yeah. He was working on a bridge in West Hampton that night, and he feels the bridge shake from what sounds like an explosion. He looks up. He captures everything. He sees everything. And, the plane comes up. He catches it come up from behind the houses on the other side of the canal there. And he watches it arc over the same, first boom, 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 third explosion, plane falls out of the sky. Perfect eyewitness. And he's an Army vet, no nonsense guy, mechanically inclined. I mean, so he's not prone to fancy. And so the FBI interviews him. He says what he saw. And then the CIA intervenes now. And this is all in the documents that I have. The CIA is explaining now to the NTSB why Mike Wire wasn't a credible eyewitness. He was CIA witness number one. He was that important. He goes, well, he told us the first time he thought he saw it come up from behind the houses. But when we talked to him the second time, he said that it was about 20 degrees above the horizon where he first saw the missile. But that's exactly where Flight 800 was at the time. So what he saw really was not an ascending missile, but rather the noseless airplane arcing up and
oh my
over.
Gosh! Wow, what a distortion of his reality, right?
And then and here's where they went wrong. When the FBI was redacting the names off the 302s, they missed Wire. The person redacting it read it as like a regular word, a W-I-R-E, right? Exactly. And so the people at Accuracy and Media were able to trace Mike down. And then once they did, then they realized there was no second interview. The CIA guy seemed to have improvised it on the spot, trying to explain to the NTSB, because unlike with Witness 73, they never put a second 302 into Mike's file. There's only one. It's the first one.
A mission of the CIA, what? To deceive, and obviously this person's true testimony is either never secondarily interviewed, he's not secondarily interviewed, or totally distorted from the fact. But here we go. Witness 649, Joseph Delgado, he sees something. He's credible according to your reports. You see Witness
totally
144,
credible.
Ann DiCarlo sees a missile-like object hit the airplane. How much more credible can that be? But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to take that momentary pause that refreshes. And as we go to this hard break at the bottom of the hour, what would you do, Jack, in a theater of the mind? You'd go to the snack bar, right? And hopefully enjoy just a few moments while we have an intermission. But seriously, folks, join us here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Great guest, as you tell us. If you'd like to email me, it's simply this, drsky@wabcradio.com. And many thanks to owner and operator John Katsimatidis for giving me the privilege and honor of sitting behind this microphone. And from the executive staff, Chad Lopez, obviously a radio station in the know and on the grow. We'll continue with your questions and comments and much more here on the mystery of TW-800, the crash, the cover-up, and the conspiracy. Our special guest, Jack Cashill. We will be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Wayne Newton, and you are listening to the Dr. Sky Show. Always remember your eyes to the sky. God bless you.
Number of miles flown for the 747 fleet to date, approximately 57 billion miles. Space travel equivalent, 137,000 round trips to the moon, and the total estimated number of passengers flown to date, 5.9 billion souls, almost 80% of the current world population. We continue with our special guest. All guests are special here on the Dr. Sky Experience in what we call the Theater of the Mind. Jack Cashill, author of many books, but we concentrate on the tragedy 30 years later, no real answers to TWA-800, the crash, the cover-up, and the conspiracy. Jack, amazing, and would like to, have you back in the future on this subject as more information comes to the forefront. Let's talk about some of these theories, and you can dispel them as we get them.
Sure.
Bomb on board. No real credible evidence, for anything in that regard, right? That's been discounted, but
absolutely.
It was a big theory.
However, what's interesting is that for the first month of the investigation, the FBI steered the New York Times into believing it was a bomb. So on August 23rd, now we're 5 weeks in, the headline above the fold, New York Times, prime evidence found that explosive device on board destroys airplane. Next to it was like, Clinton signs welfare reform bill. So one of those headlines had to go, and it was the bomb one. But the bomb was less scary than missile, and you could control for a bomb. You could do better screening or whatever. But then they switched. They realized they improvised this whole thing. Then they realized they didn't even need a bomb. They could just call it a mechanical failure, which they did about a month later. And then they went with mechanical failure thereafter.
Amazing. What about this? The man-pad shoulder-fired missile allegedly out in the ocean somewhere. Terrorist boat, terrorist missile. Any credence to this as far as something hitting it? Meaning it's a man-pad
not
rocket.
in terms of the missile taking out the airplane. However, I was on a show yesterday with Al Francis, a TWA captain. Okay. He believes, and it's not a far-fetched theory at all, that the missile that the Navy fired was fired at, not at a drone, but at either a missile fired from a boat in the Atlantic there, or at a explosive laden aircraft designed to take out 747. And so, in other words, he's saying that the Navy did not misfire; they fired at this other object, and the Aegis systems are designed to do that, to take out other missiles.
Sure.
But that it tracked onto TWA 800 and blew it up. That's not out of the question at all. But we both agree on it. Al Francis and I were, no one else follows it more closely than we have, agreed there was a naval missile that took out TWA 800.
Well, just to set the record straight here, again, RPG-7s, which are obviously rocket-powered, propelled grenades, that's a different story, much lower, obviously, ability to shoot in distance. But even these man-pads, like they have today, even more advanced than then. So are you saying, am I hearing it clear that it's more than likely that it's not something that they would fire shoulder-fired from a boat off the ocean? It would more than likely has to be a much more powerful rocket, because from what I'm reading, man-pads don't necessarily run, and again, this is back in 1996, all the way up to 15,000 feet, or maybe I'm wrong.
No, right.
What say you?
I know, you're right. It's hard to believe. Maybe under the right fluky circumstances, they could do it. It's actually at 13.5 or whatever. But
amazing.
Al believes, and this is kind of interesting because it goes back to the Iran factor. He believes that, I think, if I interpret him right, that it was a state-sponsored terrorist act on a more powerful missile than a man-pad. That is, is probably a stable boat-launched missile.
Sure.
And you have to remember that 8 years earlier, we accidentally blew a Iranian Airbus out of the sky and killed 300 people.
I remember the day. It sounded like it was yesterday.
And,
that's a sad day.
Yeah. So, they had their reasons, I suppose. 2 days before the Olympics, and let's face it, we've been at war with Iran for 47 years. People who want to make believe that's not true are denying the evidence. Here's what we also know, is that thinking it was a terrorist attack, the people in the Situation Room, before they got all the information, were contemplating what they called the Eisenhower option, which was a massive missile attack on Iran. They believed that Iran was the culprit. A month earlier,
even back then. Tensions were tight. Obviously, we can go back into history and look at the capture of our Americans over there with the original Khomeini.
A month earlier, we do know that Iran was responsible for the bombing of the Khobar Towers and an American base in Saudi Arabia, killing 19 Americans. So it was, and about 2 weeks after the incident, Clinton did an interview with this historian named Taylor Branch, in which he told him at that time, and Branch promised not to publish any of this for 10 years, that he believed it was an Iranian missile that took out the plane.
Totally amazing. Let's continue with the callers. We appreciate their patience. Let's now go to line 4. Walt, you're on in Yonkers with Jack Cashill. Good morning to you.
Evening, J.R. Good morning, gentlemen. I somehow have a minor connection with both TWA 800 and 9/11. Okay. As a naval reservist with dual membership in the state naval militia, I got active duty call up to go to Riverhead, Long Island at the National Guard Armory, where the naval militia had responsibility for basically taking charge of the debris as it was brought on board from the U.S. Navy. Yes. And we had a briefing by Colonel Intini, who was the commander at the Armory, and basically told us that whatever speculation ideas you might have is just keep your mouth shut. But I do remember on the night that the plane got shot down, there was always many reports of a missile going up.
Yes.
So fast forward that to September 11th, and I was teaching in one of the suburbs, and a security guard comes in and tells me, "Hey, Walt, the plane got hit the World Trade Center," and without even thinking, I said, "Oh, F word," in front of my class, Bin Laden. Turns out that we had some neighbors across the street from where I live who were of, shall we say, Middle Eastern descent. They suddenly left the house that they were renting on September the 10th, and of course, made wherever they went to, and turns out that I called a local police person I know, and I got home from school, and state police, local police, FBI checked that house out, and according to a neighbor, overheard discussing the investigators there say that they had found plans in that rental house to blow up George Washington Bridge. So my speculation is that Bin Laden or Iranians or somebody said, "Look, we blow up their plane, the Americans do nothing. We blow up their embassy, with the Americans do nothing. What do we have to do to get their attention? Let's blow up World Trade Center."
You know something, Walt, you bring up, really, first, thanks for your service, but in limited time here, it also reminds me, right, Jack, of Operation Bojinka, use airplanes as weapons of destruction. Walt brings up some good conversational points. Go ahead, Jack. I'm sorry to cut you out.
Yeah, in Operation Bojinka, which was a KSM Ramzi Youssef operation, was busted in Manila, I think in '95. They had plans to do two things. One, the most ambitious one, was to plant bombs on like a dozen airliners going across the Pacific, and they were all going to blow up at the same time.
Exactly.
The other one, a little more practical, was to charter a plane, take a charter plane, and stuff it with explosives and attack an American target. I don't know which the targets weren't designated, but they could
like a pre-9/11, right, with commercial airlines.
That's right. Or they could have just tried to do it to take out a commercial airline like a 747.
Sure.
So, but Bojinka was real. Ramzi Youssef was in prison at the Metropolitan Correction Center in Manhattan at that time. And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the 9/11 mastermind, was deeply involved in that as well. So there are a lot of bad actors out there.
Absolutely. And I gather Ramzi Youssef, I think something he said, I guess, and tell me if I'm right on this, I think I read it somewhere in the back of my mind. I remember the first World Trade Center bombing. They get him, and then all of a sudden he says, we didn't take the buildings down this time, but we will, or something to that effect. That was
You're absolutely right, because what they did is in the '93 World Trade Center bombing, in which I think about a half dozen people were killed, but their goal was to have one building topple over into the other, right? And they made some mistakes. For one thing, they rented the car and gave their real IDs when they rented the van, right? And they were able to bust them quickly. But the other thing is that the place they parked the car, parked their van with the explosives, was if they had parked it in a more strategic place, they might have even succeeded in what they were hoping to do. They were totally disappointed at the outcome.
Absolutely. And using aircraft as weapons of war is certainly something our government knew about for quite a long time, and not to be stick a dart on somebody in any administration. I think the Clinton administration knew about this, even if they didn't act.
Yes.
The Bush administration,
right, because
in their daily briefing, they didn't respond.
Right. I know from Buzz Patterson, because he carried the documents around, that Clinton had seen the Bojinka plans and signed off on them. And personally, I think that's what Sandy Berger was looking for when he risked his career and his very freedom to pilfer documents from the National Archives.
Well, it goes deeper than that, I guess, and I'm just remembering this. Sandy Berger, of course, allegedly or factually steals government documents, maybe on this particular episode of TW 800. And let me get specific, in his underwear and socks. Is that a fair assessment? Oh, my God. Or how he took it.
He stuck them down there. Took him back in a minute. Took him back to his apartment and shredded them.
Cover
what
up.
Happens to him?
Cover up.
These are original state secrets and original documents. The DOJ, nominally under George Bush, but being run by Democratic lifers, recommend a $10,000 fine for that act.
That's
right?
crazy.
You and
Jack,
I
we're
were
up against the
talking-
break. I hate to cut people short, but in the space-time
Sure.
continuum,
Yeah.
the clock rules. We'll be right back. More with Jack Cashill. And line 2, Eduardo in Tampa. Stay there if you can, because we'll get you on the air. And Kevin in Long Island. And anybody else, we'll try to get you into the top of the hour. We'll conclude with what we really think from the author's perspective, Jack Cashill, what really happened on that date back in 1996. Here on the Dr. Sky Experience. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
You don't know who this is? This is Al Lewis, better known as Grandpa Munster, and whenever I'm in that lovely city, Phoenix, you know what I do? I listen to Dr. Sky. You know why? Because I want to keep my head above the clouds.
In memory of Al Lewis, a good friend of mine and many of you. 48 minutes after the hour, we continue with Jack Cashill. Equally important are the people who are on hold. Let's go to line number 2, Eduardo in Tampa. You're on with Jack Cashill. Good morning.
Yeah, Dr. Sky and Jake, thank you for taking my call. A couple of things here. I don't know if you think these are realistic points. First, regarding 9/11, I think some of these people that were in Florida didn't want to learn how to land planes. And how realistic is it to have lasers on all these planes? Your Environment is a New Mexico company that was doing, I just saw this on 60 Minutes, testing on drones, and I seen lasers shot out of the ships, the Navy ships. So why in 2026 we don't have lasers on airplanes?
Interesting. There you go.
No, that's a good question. I can't answer that, but by the way, my grandchildren live in Tampa. I love the city. I get there 8 times a year, probably.
Beautiful place.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't. I can't answer that intelligently, Eduardo. I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you, Eduardo. Always appreciate you on the Dr. Sky Experience. Let's go to line number 5. Kevin's been patient in Long Island. You're on with Jack Cashill. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Great show. I love you on Sunday with Dr. Catsimatidis. I live on Long Island. I've talked to enough people. There was definitely a missile. Was it a shoulder fired? Was it on purpose? Was it an accident? But more importantly, sir, I do request your scientific explanation. How is a plane possible, a TWA 747, to go more than 500 miles an hour at a ground level? Where was the plane, the Pentagon, hitting the Pentagon? Where are the engines? Where is the scientific explanations for 9/11? Please, I know this is a sensitive subject, but how is it possible that in Pennsylvania you don't see the plane? Where was the passengers in the luggage in the Pentagon? Show us the plane. Forget about the alien planes. Show us the plane going across that lawn.
Kevin, you
and
bring
I'll
up
believe
something.
that a plane hit the Pentagon.
No,
Where's the
Kevin,
evidence? The evidence
you're
is
right.
not physics.
Kevin, you're so right. I've watched this, and how many times have we seen an alleged video of the flight that hits the Pentagon? You're right. I mean, you see the hole that it made. Where's the aluminum? Where's the engines, as you described? But, Jack, your thoughts on that, because these great mysteries, I mean, it's incredible. Tell us more, Jack. If you
Well, I'm gonna disappoint people here because I'm supposed to be a conspiracy theorist. But one guy I trust, a guy named General Ben Parton, he was the dissenting voice in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
He risked his career to say a truck bomb did not cause all this damage. He, however, was at the Pentagon that day, and he said, I had body parts in my hand. I had uniforms in my hand. Anyone who tells me a plane did not hit this building doesn't know what they're talking about. And I trust Ben Parton over, someone else's opinion, because I know he's capable of going out on the edge to tell the truth.
I know. It's so sad because the flight that did hit the Pentagon, as we're talking about here, obviously there is some speculation out there. Where are all the parts? But I guess when you're traveling that fast and you hit something solid like that, there's probably not much left at all as you see the damage from the air. aerial photography of that. It's crazy. But Kevin, thank you. We bring up all kinds of different opinions, and we certainly respect everybody as long as we talk about it, right, and what we consider to be critical thinking and dialogue. But let me ask you this before the clock runs out. Your theory as we get to the end of the show, what did happen, in Jack Cashill's opinion here, with TWA 800? What's the latest information that you could tell this audience and what caused this, at least at this point in time?
Well, I would say the smoking gun for me is the PS3. There was the P3 rather. There was flying directly overhead, Flight 800.
The Orion aircraft, right? A Navy.
That's right, P3 Orion, and it was functioning as kind of an AWACS. That it was coordinating information among the members of his battle group, which included both submarines and cruisers. So they would communicate to the P3 and send the signal back down to the other entities. Sure. It was right there. It wasn't there for a terrorist. In fact, after the event, immediately after the event, it flew down to South New Jersey to do a routine sub hunt. It does that. No, it was there for the sake of coordinating a missile test. The really sharpest guy in this is the guy who's led the suit, Crick versus Raytheon, a physicist named Tom Stalkup. He's been working this case for 30 years. He and I come to the exact same conclusion from different avenues. He, through his technical skills, me from deducing information from all the various variables involved.
Yeah. So in summary, it's one of ours, a missile with a misguided situation there, looked at this aircraft, or somehow it was, ID'd, and somehow they didn't recognize it was a commercial airliner, and for whatever, who knows? Beyond that, you've given us your opinion. Let's try to go to one more caller before we go ahead and close out the show. Line number 2, Steve in New Jersey. You'll have to be brief, but you're on the air with Jack Cashill. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello, Dr. Sky, and here's my comment for the guest. Pierre Salinger went as a result of this, all right, and his theory. He went from being the press secretary for the great JFK, and overnight, when he came forward with his theory that it was an errant missile, U.S. missile, they savaged him, the media and the Clinton administration. And he was never the same after that. What do you think about that, sir?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They ruined his career. In November of 1996, before anyone had settled on a final theory of what happened, the New York Times ran 4 articles mocking Pierre Salinger with headlines like, "Hey, Pierre, is that a Masonic flag on the moon?" That's a real headline. And before that, you're right, he was the legendary press secretary for JFK. He had been a secretary, a senator from California. And he was a widely respected international, public relations consultant. After that, he was, put out to pasture.
Well, Steve, thank you for your commentary. You're spot on that. And even more important than anything I could ever say is the tribute and memorial to the 230 souls that perished on that night some 30 years ago, and that the families, the relatives that still live with this in their mind. Again, Jack, I really appreciate you, TWA 800, behind the cover-up and conspiracy. I'd like to do this in the future with you. You're such a broad-based author. One book, if you describe it, and I know it's not fair if we have a minute or so, Ashley, The Untold Story of the Women of January 6th. Just give us a quick look-see, and we'll have you on, as long as you would agree, to talk more about these books about American exceptionalism and the mysteries that we need to hear about.
Well, in that book, I covered 10 women who went to Washington. I had to cover why they went, what their day was like, what they experienced, just in quick summary. And I just chose them almost at random. Amazingly, all 10 agreed. I can't say that. All the 8 of the 10 who lived agreed to cooperate with me, as did Ashley Babbitt's mother. 2 of those women were killed by the police. And the other 8, all of them were incarcerated. And the worst crime any of them committed was to break a window. And that woman got 4.5 years in prison. The other 8 all just wandered around inside the Capitol saying prayers or taking selfies. And they all were incarcerated.
Wow. Other than Ashley, in other words, those that perished,
Ashley,
are those other women freed now?
Right.
I mean, Ashley perished, obviously.
Yeah, they're all out.
They're all out.
Some of them were still in prison when Trump took over and pardoned them. But 2 of the women who were killed, Roseanne Boyle and Ashley Babbitt, and the other 8 all went to prison. And when you look at the nature of their crime and the time they had to serve, you see that it was the greatest mass injustice on American soil since Japanese internment.
Wow. Powerful. Jack, we'll have to have you back, but I'm going to get a yes or no from you. Is that fine by you that we can do this again? I hope it is a yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's I have to do it at a night where I can afford to stay up till 2 a.m.
Appreciate it. Unless you fly to Hawaii and spend the time doing the interview.
Yeah, no, or I can't. I live in Kansas City. When I'm back in Kansas City, it's only 1 a.m. It'd be better.
We'll work it out. But I do thank you, Jack Cashill. Tell us again, Substack, how do they get in touch with you? And hopefully we'll do that.
Substack.com. The best way to do it is Substack.com and just look for Jack Cashill. If I would say this, if you have very special information about 800, you can go to my website, Cashill.com, and it'll tell you how to contact me.
I think that's great, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of response because the mystery still continues here, and we're privileged and honored to have you as a guest right here. So thank you. Blessings to you and everyone else who's called the Dr. Sky Experience as we talk about these great subjects that you tell us, ladies and gentlemen, that you're of interest. The subjects of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, the stories of American exceptionalism, and what about the great mysteries fitting in with TWA 800, the crash, the cover-up, and the conspiracy. Thank you so much, Jack Cashill. We'll do it again, and blessings to you and your family. Thanks for being on board.
Well, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, as immediately after this show, stay tuned to the Talk Radio 77 WABC for another Side of Midnight with Lionel as he takes you into the early morning hours, just at the time that the sun is popping up. And don't forget, we're in the dog days of summer. What the heck is that again? July 3 to August 11th. Where do we get the name from? It's the rising of the brightest star in the heavens called Sirius, the dog star. The ancient Egyptians used this and monitored their agricultural cycles. They call it the heliacal rising of Sirius. Hot, sultry days of summer, as you would expect. It has an astronomical connection, and we do appreciate our helmsmen, both Bill and Jackson, for making sure that you get on the air, that everybody can be heard clearly in the critical thinking and dialogue mannerisms of which we do the show, a show that we call the Dr. Sky Experience. Tomorrow night, we'll be talking with someone about the subject of consciousness, the Book of Heaven, an interesting woman, Ashley. She's going to be on our radio show. And in hour number 2, we're going to go aviation again and talk with an aviation legend, a great book author like Jack Cashill. This one, Bill Yenny, talking all about some of the mysteries of this new Air Force One and what happened when President Trump boarded the older one and not the new one, and also about American railroads, the history of great American exceptionalism, stories you might want to know and didn't know on the Dr. Sky Experience. Clear skies, good health. We'll see you in less than 24 hours.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.